So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to watch this video. My name is Jason Wicker. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Rackspace here in Texas and supporting the public sector. And we've been approached by the chairman of the IT Caucus to put together a little bit of an educational video for the caucus members to understand a little bit more about artificial intelligence, maybe some common terms, so that they can both speak effectively internally with each other as policy comes up and as the legislative session comes up, but also be able to articulate their thoughts and positions on artificial intelligence to the consumer, to the constituent. And with that, I have my partner in crime, Nirmal Raon from Rackspace, who runs all things artificial intelligence for us. Nirmal, thanks for taking the time. We're actually here at the Educause conference in San Antonio. Nirmal, could you maybe start off with, how would you define artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on,
Absolutely.
Jason. Hey everyone, Nirmal Raon, VP for AI, working with Rackspace along with Jason. Happy to be here and share my insights on AI. Now, getting to your question on sort of what's the basic,
what's the basic principle? What do we call it?
Definition of AI. In the most simplest terms, the way to think about AI is sort of your super cool assistant or co-worker that basically has the world's knowledge. And based on that knowledge and data, it's able to make decisions, do some predictions, and also act on your behalf. Now, where it's important is it's applicable in a whole wide variety of fields. If you think of it, autonomous driving cars, that's an application of AI. Surgery, you can apply AI in surgery, autonomous surgery. You can also apply AI for simple things like just question and answers. ChatGPT made that popular. So I got a question, I go ask, and I get a response that is just not completely out there on the internet, but it's generated by the model. So it's generated information based on existing knowledge. Now, if you think about how do you apply that from a legislative purpose, think of it as a super smart aide, right? We talk about a coworker that knows all the information. It can give you the right bits of information as and when you need it.
And to an extent, right? So, one of the things when we talk to staffers about artificial intelligence, one of the things that they want to see it as an assistant is, how can it help me summarize the vast quantities of information that the ledge has to review, right? Whether it's transcripts for policies or whether it's review of existing laws or even, all of the hearings that are going on, right? Summarizing those hearings, identifying the speakers. And so those are some great use cases that we feel are really close to the legislative body in those areas. But you've got a big task in front of you this next session, right? And that is kind of defining how Texas is going to interact in the world of artificial intelligence, right? What are we going to do from a policy perspective? What are you going to do from a regulatory perspective? And our goal in this conversation is really just to kind of arm you with the things to think about, right? What are the terms? What are the concerns, right? So Nirmal touched on automation. We touched on assistants, right? We touched on knowledge workers. These are areas where state agencies have been, looking and exploring. Commercial entities are looking and delivering solutions in this area. And so when we start to talk about the categories, right? So if I'm a legislator and I look at how do I take this massive thing that is artificial intelligence and I start to put it into containable, discussionable buckets, right? What are the big 3 or 4 that you would categorize us in?
We talked about the co-workers and the assistants. I think that is the most basic level to start.
Knowledge workers.
Knowledge workers. And so it can be your subject matter expert. It can be an assistant or the co-worker where you're working with the AI to produce some output. Now, all of these are non-autonomous systems.
Non-autonomous?
Yes.
Okay.
Meaning you've got a human in the mix.
Yep.
Right? So the AI is not taking an action on its own.
Okay, so it's just answering my questions for me.
It is just answering your questions.
Based off of what it knows, based off of what we've taught it.
Exactly. A human is actually leveraging the technology to get some tasks done, right, at the basic level.
Okay.
So they're using AI to become, I hate to say it, superhumans, but they're getting the knowledge of many built into a model,
Right.
and they're able to leverage that. So that's one category.
Okay.
Where you got the humans interacting with the AI, and then taking whatever action.
Making better enabled humans.
Making better decisions.
Okay.
Right?
Data-driven.
Data-driven decisions.
Okay.
The second part is what most of us see out there, right? Your recommendation engines, your tracking, fraud detection, like any website you go, everything you see out in the world.
Okay.
Where those are, you can say they're kind of semi-autonomous because you as a user are not directly impacting it. Yes, it is using your data, but that system is acting on behalf of someone.
So whether
a commercial
it's
entity
yeah, so
or
whether
a
it's like
government
whether
entity.
it's I'm looking at my Amazon app and it's giving me recommendations based off of my previous looks,
Yep.
or whether it's my Target app that's doing the same thing, or even sometimes maybe the ads that are showing up in my browser, all of that is
Exactly.
powered by AI in the back end.
It is.
Okay.
Right? So in the first scenario, I as a person have full control over the system.
Right. I'm asking a question, I'm getting an answer.
I'm getting a response.
Okay.
In the second classification, you as a user have no control over the system. But a corporate or another entity has control over the system.
Right. Using data that I've probably checked a box and said it's okay to use.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So that's a category. And plenty of examples, right? It's been out there for a while now.
Sure.
And then the third category is the fully autonomous
Okay.
AI or agents. Yes, someone's building them. You as a user may or may not have control over it. Right?
Okay.
It's that is where it gets tricky. And the AI or the system is making those decisions autonomously, meaning it is making the decisions solely based on the information and inputs it has without human intervention.
So it's really important from a legislative perspective to make sure that the data that's driving those autonomous decisions, where they're allowed, is reputable.
Yes.
And privacy-wise is, follows the Texas privacy regulations, follows federal privacy regulations, right? And
Yep.
I know that we do that with a number of vendors, but as more and more functions,
Yep.
right, are handed over to artificial intelligence, right? And I say functions because I don't like the word jobs,
Yep.
right? Because we're not replacing people's jobs, we're
Nope.
making their lives easier, faster, better.
The roles are going to change.
Roles are going to change, right? Okay, so the
When we didn't have software development, I know, 50 years back, right?
Okay.
The earliest probably started around 60s, 70s.
right,
You didn't have a role of software developer before that.
okay,
Now you have, right? Next 20 years, to be honest, I don't know what the new roles are going to be.
well, we've already
In the
seen
next 1 or 2 years, prompt engineering, I mean, that becomes
prompt
the role.
engineering, right? That was the one we've
That
already
just becomes everybody's role. In
We've
fact.
already seen that, right? And
We've
that's
seen that.
and so when you say everybody's role, it's one of the things that's important for legislators to understand is that the cat's out of the bag. It's there. It's affecting everybody, right? And so in some way, shape, or form, we're always going to be interacting, kind of in the future, with some form, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just knowledge work. Maybe it's fully autonomous, right? Maybe it's my car braking systems or the stoplight systems that are being implemented by TxDOT and out there in the
Yeah.
world today. So let's talk a little bit about low risk, high risk,
risk,
low
yeah.
impact, high impact. How would you kind of describe that?
Yeah. So if we take those three sort of broad classifications, the first one is on the lower end of the spectrum, right? Low risk systems.
Right. Knowledge,
Knowledge workers, co-workers, and there's a human always involved.
always human in the loop.
Right.
Okay.
And the risk starts to compound as you move to the right. Fully autonomous, that's the highest risk
Okay.
because it's making autonomous decisions.
Okay.
And that could, in a lot of cases, mean a risk to life, right?
Life,
So,
limb, privacy, personal
a
choice.
whole bunch of things, right?
Right.
But very high risk.
Yes.
Potential to do harm. That's the best way to calculate
Okay.
it, right?
Okay.
And that harm could be in any way.
Right. Okay, so it could be harm to my data, it could be harm to my person.
Yeah.
Could be a stoplight doesn't work, a brake doesn't happen.
It could be a physical harm
Okay.
or an economic harm, right? So the middle category could potentially cause an economic harm.
Right. So we want to make sure that not only is our data being protected and secured as we would expect following privacy laws and regulations, but that it's also important to understand the scope of impact.
Yes.
Right? Because I know in some of these cases, the autonomous systems, maybe they're just doing paperwork automatically. And so that's less of an impact.
Yeah, or a robot in a factory.
A robot in a factory, okay,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so we see that obviously with a lot of the distribution centers that are going on in Texas, right, that are coming out
So the
today.
scope is limited there,
Right.
So again, there is risk. I'm not saying there's not risk,
Sure.
but the scope is limited as you're talking about scope. A self-driving car, the scope is unbounded.
Right, the highway, the roads, off-roads, parking lots, exactly.
Yeah, we've seen all the Waymo cars driving in San Francisco.
Right, in San Francisco and Austin now, right? We have them as well, traveling around there. So, we talk about understanding kind of categorization, and that's something that will help the legislators speak about different buckets of potential regulation and potential areas where we need to address this, but maybe separately from this. And I think we had talked a little bit earlier before we started about kind of my favorite rule, right? The 80-20 rule, right? So if we take the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of my value for 20% of my effort, or is it worth 80% of my effort for 20% of my value? AI kind of falls into that, right?
It
so
does.
I mean, there's areas
Absolutely
that.
does.
So let's talk a little bit about how that regulation or guidance or guide rails or areas, how would that play in that 80-20 rule so that we do the right thing, but we don't suppress innovation?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a great point, Jason. So when we think about 80-20, I do want to bring in a couple of concepts here.
Sure.
So that helps us explain how to think about it. So risk is a big factor of it, right? The starting point, I'd say, is responsible use of AI.
Okay.
Right? So what are the principles, what are the ethos that you want to live by, right? And you want the state and the city and the people to live by, and the country broadly, right? And there's various elements within what constitutes responsible AI. There's aspects of security that's in there. There's aspects of sort of the social good and harm. So thinking about bias, transparency,
fairness, explainability, fairness,
all of those elements. And then there is aspects of equity as well that we want to tie in, because from a state perspective, you got to think about how does this impact my population overall.
Right.
So the regulations have to have aspects that account for equity. Otherwise, AI has the potential impact to broaden the gap even more.
On an equity perspective, right? So yeah, and that's unfortunately that's with a lot of technologies, right? It can broaden that horizon, but I think at the same time, when done and regulated properly, it can actually close those gaps, right?
Exactly, yes. So that is the opportunity.
Okay.
Right? So you got that bucket. Then you have your privacy, trust, and your risk factors. So those are equally important. So now, as a legislator, it's important that we take all of those principles and then balance them out so that that innovative piece, that 80%, is not hindered by
the
strict regulations. But at the same time, you have to have that balance for certain types of systems. Again, I'm going to use the term the cause no harm type of systems that require much more strict regulations, because otherwise innovation can be unbounded.
Right, and that's not always a good thing.
It's not always a good thing, yes. So we want to be able to redirect it to the good causes, and that's why I bring equitable back in place.
So, if we look at the legislator, right, the Texas legislation doesn't like to necessarily always kind of stick their fingers in everybody's lives, right? And we appreciate that as citizens of Texas.
And you shouldn't, right?
Right. Yep. But we do want to know that they have our best interest in mind at the agency level, at the corporate level, at the privacy level. And so, you said some words that I think are critical for the legislators to know, that if you're not saying these words in these conversations, there are parts of that are missing, and that's trust. It's transparency.
Yes.
It's bias mitigation. It's risk mitigation, right? So, and whether it's regulated like a financial institution or healthcare data, it kind of spreads all through those areas. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll take a simple example.
Sure.
Right? So, traffic lights.
Yes.
Right. Again, let's set AI aside for a second.
Okay.
we didn't have any cars back in the early 1900s, right? Even
Right.
800s. And then you had cars, and then that brought about change,
Right.
right? And then you had traffic cops who were redirecting
Traffic and then the traffic
before
lights. Okay.
the lights came on. And I'm sure when the traffic lights were initially introduced, there was a lot of confusion. People were not always following the lights and signals.
Okay.
Granted, you still have a few trespassers now that jump red lights.
Sure.
But in general, when people see a green light, right, they proceed forward. When they see yellow, they slow down and they stop when it's a red. So people are, in a way, conditioned to follow rules.
Okay. So it's helpful then if the legislative is able to actually be able to say green, yellow, red almost
Yes.
in its basic
In its
forms,
basic form,
right?
yes.
To, if it's knowledge worker and it helps people do their jobs faster and it's no privacy data and it's no security and we're doing it and we're putting it in the proper format, then green, go.
Yes.
Right?
So it is the conditioning, right? So it cannot always be green.
Sure.
It cannot always be yellow or red either,
Right.
right? Both of those cause harm. Like if it's say yellow or blinking lights, then you're going one car at a time, right? You're causing all the traffic jam, right? Slows down innovation.
Right.
If it's green all the time, if it's in all directions, then you're going to have accidents, right? Then you just opened up Pandora's box.
So, but if we look to continue down your traffic light, discussion, the rules of traffic lights and traffic rules have been built over the years, working with local and state and multiple entities
Yep.
to put those rules and regulations together. So you're proposing almost a similar concept of a traffic map, kind of a workflow roadmap, if you will, and then
Yes.
maybe a little deeper than we want to get, but
Sure.
these are the things that we know are great, these are the things that we really should look at and take a second look at, and then these are the things that you should probably get permission for,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so
Yeah, that's a good way to sort of bucket them.
bucket
right?
it up, right?
Yep.
So I mean, from a legislative perspective, as we start to look at how, you as legislators can invest in artificial intelligence for Texas while allowing for innovation and growth without, too much regulation and too much hindrance. There's a lot of moving parts that are out there. Fortunately, the IT Caucus is a great place for a lot of people to pull that information together. And I know that we've continued to have discussions about artificial intelligence. You've participated, I've participated in some of these with those folks. And I hope that this, overall kind of educational video, if you will, gets the wheels turning to help explain some of the key terms, maybe talk about some of the things that you understand, as well as how can the legislators help innovation in Texas while protecting the constituent and their data.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big mission.
It is a very big mission, right?
Right.
And it's not hypothetical anymore.
No, it's not hypothetical anymore.
It is here. It is now.
It is, right?
I can't push that 5 years, 10 years down the road. No.
And that's actually a conversation we have a lot with leaders, right? When we talk about the fact that the Pandora's box is open,
Yeah.
right? I mean, even here today at Educause, right, we've had a number of folks come by and talk to us about artificial intelligence and how they enable it for their student bodies, for their professors,
Yeah.
for everybody, because everybody wants to leverage it because it is a force multiplier, a momentum creator, right?
It is.
I love the term, and I think we used this at the last IT Caucus conversation, which is it helps get rid of the dull, dangerous, and unmeasurable, right? And provide value. So, that value is untapped. I mean, from an economic perspective, what's the ceiling for Texas? And I know I'm throwing one out at you we hadn't prepared for, but I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head that this can affect every industry in Texas.
It can, yes. So I was listening to a podcast on looking at like Texas's trajectory
Okay.
over the past, I think, 3-4 decades. how we're set to be the largest state by population I think by the 40s.
Yep.
So not too far off. So you're going to be the largest state. You're already, if I take Texas as a country, you fall within the top 10.
20 to top 10
No, it's
GDP?
the top 10. It's like 8.
8 GDP
Yeah,
now, right?
7 or 8, 8 or 9 maybe, but it's in that 7, 8, 9 GDP, right? So we're already up there. The potential is enormous. And you see, again, different states taking it, a lot of countries are taking, this becomes a highest priority.
Yes.
That is primarily because this is going to change a whole bunch of industries.
Yes.
Right? We're not thinking about the full potential yet. And those are going to start coming out in the year 1, year 2. And that is going to cause a lot of impact, both economic and social impact.
So there's enhancements and accelerations and modifications of existing business models.
Yep.
Right? How can I do more, better, faster, provide a higher quality service to my constituent, provide a higher quality? But then there's the industries that we don't even know exist yet.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are things that are beyond our kin to see, right? And so,
So that's where the potential is, right? That's where the opportunity for growth is.
Yes.
But at the same time, you have existing industries.
Yes.
And if those industries are going to get disrupted by AI, and if Texas is not leading the forefront, and that's the impact side of it. So you got to sort of brace for that impact. At the same time, go 100 miles per hour on the innovation side, so you can continue that growth trajectory.
Well, right. I mean, if we in Texas are leading the innovation, then we have some say in how the world is innovating.
Yep.
Right? Obviously we're seeing a lot of manufacturers that are using artificial intelligence, some leaders in the space moving to Texas, right? Do we have the workforce? Right? Is there something that the legislators can do to enable the workforce?
They can, yes. Do we have it now? No.
No, okay,
Right?
okay.
That's a
Sure.
short answer.
That's why I asked, right? So, again, we're moving so fast as we catch up with this. Partnering it with the legislators, partnering with the agencies, partnering with corporations. Our goal, right, is to kind of not necessarily solve and have all the answers, but at least make sure we're having all the discussions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just give another analogy, right? So, till now, knowledge or experience and expertise has been experience and expertise. Obviously, you'll gain that as you go, right? Knowledge, how best you can retain knowledge, has often been the barrier for growth.
Right.
Meaning, students that are good, like they're able to try to retain the knowledge, they excel, right? You can have students that are knowledgeable, that have great ideas, but they're not able to apply that knowledge in sort of, say, studies and things like that, right? That's primarily because they're not able to retain that knowledge.
Okay.
Right? They have practical experience and they can go get things done. Now, I think where there's opportunity for AI to sort of bridge that gap from a workforce perspective, and this is one that has the potential to lift everyone up.
Okay.
Right? Is I don't necessarily need to have all that knowledge in my head now. I've got a coworker that has the world's knowledge. I just need to be practical and see how I can apply that knowledge in meaningful ways, and I can do well.
So the modern scientific calculator, if you will.
Yes.
Right? With a scientific calculator, I don't have to remember all my formulas anymore.
Exactly.
I just have to know which buttons serve the formulas that I have.
Yes, that which is the practical purpose, right? So you've got to have the ideas.
Okay.
Yes, that is still ingenuity, but I still feel a lot of people that have the ingenuity are not able to sort of move up. Again, due to a wide variety of reasons, but AI is going to help unblock some of those.
Okay.
So it's in everybody's best interest in ensuring how we can get access to the technology to more people. That's it. Again, I'm going to tie it back to the equity when we think about a state. That is very important because that is what is going to help grow that next generation of people. Again, whether it's knowledge workers or other ways, right? That can actually help us propel forward.
Okay. And so I think, if we've talked about the workforce, we've talked a little bit about privacy. Texas is obviously very strong in privacy and personal responsibility, and so I anticipate that there will be some spirited debates around those topics for the legislators. And so I do want to wrap up with last couple of things real quick. Some other areas and some other states that I know that are out there are election fraud of any kind, really, and then deep fakes, right? Those are two things that I know from my conversations with various legislators, that is a concern for their constituents.
Absolutely.
And that's in that 20%, right?
That is absolutely in that 20%.
That red light side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Because, that may not directly cause physical harm, but harm in whole bunch of other ways, right? And sometimes potentially physical harm as well.
Correct.
Right. So, yes, that is probably the biggest concern, because yes, you can have truly autonomous AI or AGI that we're calling it, right, where it's artificial general intelligence,
right?
So then it's like your Skynets of the world, right? Just taking over things, but that is not the immediate problem. The immediate problem is what you talked about, right? Deep fakes.
Yes.
Because that could completely impact like a social strata today.
Well, it ties back to trust, right? And it ties back to visibility, and it ties back to equitability, right? And so from a legislative perspective and legally, right, it's responsibility of both, ourselves as, corporate entities, but also for the legislation to help put those guide rails in place. Those, I like the word ring fences, right? Because it stops us from going everywhere. Guardrails, I can still run over people or back over them, right? But if we were to look at a utopian legislation, we would have that red light legislation, right? That said, hey, you know what? No. Right? And by the way, when I say no, I mean you can't do this. I don't want the technology. We're going to remove that. Maybe it becomes, that specific thing, kind of like cryptography, becomes regulated.
Right.
And then you've got the yellow light, right, which is, hey, these are privacy things. I'm using people's PII. I have healthcare data. I have financial data. I have to be the respectful human in the loop that leverages that platform. So we need some guidance of right, wrong, too far left, too far right from the legislators on what that future state looks like.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so the middle bucket, right? There's a lot of potential good to be had there.
Yes.
And for us, it's a lot more quantifiable on the rules and the regulations that govern that area. And you touched on those, right? PHI, PII, and those are more easy to formulate and enable.
Right.
That 20% is where it becomes really tricky. So really focusing on getting those first few steps in, where here are some, you don't want to use guardrails, ring fences, right?
Sure.
And maybe that's where the technology piece comes into play, right? At the technology layer, you call it the guardrails. The technology is going to be there.
Right.
And the technology companies are not going to take any responsibility on how people use it. That's where legislation comes into play. That is the only ring fence that can help people or sort of guide people in the right path.
So prescribed responsibility.
That's a good.
Prescribed responsibility for the corporate citizen and for the technologies out there. And then there's the green light. And I think the green light is knowledge workers, more with less.
Yes.
Right? Putting more people on a level playing field, providing
having productivity across the board,
democratic data, right? And all the data that's generated, and making sure that it's beneficial and it's useful, because we generate more and more data every day, and AI is the valve that'll allow us to tap into that. So, Nirmal, I wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to come in and have this conversation. Legislators Caucus, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us kind of have this conversation. Hopefully this was interesting and educational to you. You can always reach out to us through the caucus, and we're happy to have some deeper conversations or address any specific questions that you may have. But thank you very much for your service, and appreciate it, and y'all have a great day.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.